Good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda Arena, and this evening I'm going to be telling you a bit about my community. This project was very interesting for me, as it made me reflect a bit about the decisions my husband and I made 2 years ago when we decided to buy a home in Cheltenham. And I would say that some things have changed over the 2 years, I think, and so it was very interesting to reflect on what has changed, what my priorities and values are now, and whether or not I would consider this still a good community and a good option to raise our children. So, where I live. If you were to write me a letter, it would be on the letter and my address, it would say Glenside. Glenside is what the Census Bureau considers the census designated place. So basically, it's a population, kind of it's been informally created, but the census still keeps track of the population, just because of how close knit and tight and important Glenside is. But Glenside actually is a stretches into three different townships. And that'd be Abington, Cheltenham, and Springfield. So we live in Cheltenham Township. So Cheltenham Township is where we pay our taxes. That's who handles all of our like that's where our fire station is, or our the trash pickup is from Cheltenham, and the school system. So just to give you a little idea of the difference between Glenside and Cheltenham. Glenside has a population of just a little over 8,000, where Cheltenham is 36,000 residents. It's very similar in terms of the gender makeup and the age makeup. And for both areas, the Asian and Hispanic community don't have a large presence. However, the biggest difference between Glenside and Cheltenham is that in Glenside you would find about approximately 80% of the residents are white and 7.2 are black, where in Cheltenham 57% are white and 31% are black. I'll go into this more a little bit in my assessment, but this was one of the factors that my husband and I took into consideration when we decided to buy in Cheltenham versus a different township that inside Glenside. So just specifically, since we live specifically in Cheltenham and we decided to live in Cheltenham versus another township, the rest of my presentation is solely going to focus on Cheltenham. So, crime and education. Cheltenham has a little bit higher of a crime rate than Pennsylvania does. Violent crime in Cheltenham, the probability of a victim of being a violent crime is 1 in 324, whereas in Pennsylvania it's 1 in 524. And the probability of property crime in Cheltenham is you're more than 1 in 47, and in Pennsylvania it's 1 in 54. Even though violent crime is a bit higher than the rest of Pennsylvania, I in no way ever feel unsafe. However, property crime, there are a lot of neighbors of mine that have been robbed. Their houses have been broken into. I would argue that having a large dog probably helps, but also our neighbors, my neighbors are very close, and we share a driveway, and we definitely look out for one another and kind of are not afraid to shout out if we see someone walking around our shared area that we don't know. So the education system in Cheltenham, one of the great things about it is that it's a bit smaller than the surrounding suburbs. And they really break down, and a lot of the elementary schools are brand new. So, as you can see, they there's 3 elementary schools from kindergarten to 4th grade, and then they start combining them in 5th grade. but the buildings are small. So it's just the fifth and sixth in one building, the next is seventh and eighth, and then in high school you have ninth and 12th grade. Some of you may be aware recently in Cheltenham, Cheltenham High School has been in the news. There was there was a huge fight that was videotaped where multiple teachers were injured as were students. And it's really brought attention to some of the racial tensions and issues in the Cheltenham High School. Um, it seems like recently um, now that the percentage of the black population is increasing, there has been a lot of racial tension between the white and black students. Um, and some students argue that there has been, you find a lot more of the white students in the higher classes, and, whereas most of the black students are in lower tracks or behavioral classes, and it's created a lot of issues with the students. To be honest, this is upsets me quite a bit because I wanted my children to learn how to and just I didn't want race to become a factor in terms of how they interact with people. Um, and I'm concerned about sending them to a high school where there seems to be a huge dichotomy based upon race. Um, and so it seems like they have been trying to address it. They recently hired a new superintendent, but I think how they handle these racial issues over the next 5 to 10 years will say a lot about whether or not we decide to send our children to the high school. So in Cheltenham, the median household income is about 87,000. It is a white collar neighborhood for the most part. I think one statistic I read was about approximately 90% of employed adults work in the white collar professional industry. A majority were like social services, human services, teaching. The median value of real estate is 270,000. The average travel time to work is about 30 minutes. And they say about a 20-minute drive to Philadelphia, but I do that about every day, and it probably takes me during the school year 45 minutes to an hour to get from where I am to Center City, and maybe 30 minutes during the summertime. So one of the things I didn't really read quite a bit of statistics about this, but the walkability from where I am personally, what I've experienced is pretty great. There's a lot of things I can walk to, and I'm going to cover a bit more of that in the institution section. Okay, so within walking distance from me, and when I say walking distance, I would say anywhere from 2 to 5 blocks. I have access to 2 playgrounds, the township pool, library, the farmers market. Um, and in the formal institutions, I would say the train station, downtown Glenside, and Arcadia University are all within walking distance from me. Now, this is not all that Cheltenham has to offer. I know that they have a second township pool all the way on the other side of Cheltenham in like Elkins Park area. They have at least 3 libraries and um, more parks and playgrounds than I could potentially count. Um, and we also have Curtis Arboretum, which is like a huge area for it's absolutely beautiful. And just right down the street from Morris Arboretum, which is huge, an area where you can walk around, and Penn University handles it, and it's a lot of flowers and trees and just gorgeous gardens. Um, One thing that Cheltenham High School does is offer a lot of classes to adults. They send out Cheltenham in general sends out a newsletter once a year, and just with all this, everything that's a calendar of events that are going on, um, but also the classes that the high school offers, something like dancing, yoga. There was one that was like learn how to um, Korean cooking. It was just a very eclectic variety of adult classes. Formal institutions. um, One thing about the Cheltenham government is that civic engagement and environmental concerns are really important. They've made a lot of strides in making sure that, between recycling and trash pickup and how they manage their parks and how they, the information they send out to the homes about sustainability. It's a huge presence in our community. But I also say that their communication with us is huge, just in terms of how much mail and updates and invites we get to be participants in the government and making decisions for our community. So my assessment, pros. Diversity for me, I love the fact that my neighbors are different races, ethnicities, ages. Um, it's I think it's wonderful for my children to see. It's something that we all I that my children see how as a community we participate and um, work together regardless of the potential racial cultural differences. The informal institutions, the community groups, I did mention like the huge Glenside Parade that happens every year on the 4th of July right down the street. It's um, a lot of community activities are available to me and my children. The train station and the bus stations that are within walking distance are a huge help. And I appreciate the fact that all of so many things are within walking distance, especially the elementary school that my children will attend to in a few years. Personally, my neighbors are great. Um, One of the things I would kind of add in the con list is that being in a sometimes I feel a little restricted because everybody kind of, they they pull in, they go inside their homes, and then they shut the doors at night, and that's it. And there's not a lot of people outside sitting around talking. Um, it, I wish there was more of that. But my neighbors that I do have um, are very like I make efforts to communicate as much as possible with them. One of my neighbors is elderly. I offer to try and do whatever we can. We're all do whatever I can for her around the house, around her yard. Um, during the wintertime, we're all out there shoveling this our shared driveway. So that's actually made a huge difference in um, solidifying our decision to move here. And then the elementary school, being 2 blocks, a brand new school, it has great reviews. That really, again, also solidifies our decision. Some cons, as I said earlier, the racial tensions that are happening in the high school really bother me. I don't want my children to think that it's systemic racism is acceptable or to learn how to uh, have a blind eye to that. That's the lack of formal institutions. Here's the downtown Glenside, um, and it has some small local businesses. But other than that, there are really no large businesses in Glenside or in Cheltenham, which makes our real estate taxes very burdensome. Um, so that kind of puts a small damper, but I will appreciate the fact that most of the stores that are in the downtown Glenside are small local owners. The high school, again, that just goes back to the racial tensions. And, actually, until I did this assessment, I would say the crime I never really thought about until I read that. So I'm kind of going back and forth. Again, I don't usually feel in danger, so it's not something I would consider now, and I think we take the necessary precautions um, to protect our homes. So it's not something, it's something that I probably will